So, good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I want to welcome both our guests today, Dylan McDonnell, as well as our listeners and our viewers that are tuning in. Each week, we have a great community of folks, and I think you guys are not going to want to miss this episode today with Dylan. Dylan is the founder of Foodini, and it is an app that connects you with the transparency you want when going to a restaurant so that you know what you're eating. Whether you're celiac, whether you have intolerances, this is an app that can help you make a more informed choice and be safe. Welcome, Dylan.
Thanks very much, Justine. Great to be here.
Likewise, great to meet you. I'm super excited about what you guys have built here, what you've built here, and the inspiration behind it. And so for those folks that are tuning in for the first time, haven't met you, don't know what Foodini is, maybe you can just give us the high level, more than I did, but not the whole enchilada, so that we still have things to talk about.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, just in terms of what Foodini is, we're essentially a dietary intelligence company. So, we work with restaurants, hotels, stadiums, schools to, in essence, document their menu data to tag it with the correct ingredient and allergen information so that we can then provide a personalized menu experience to customers across 150 different food allergies and dietary needs. So, what that means is that a customer can walk into a restaurant we work with, scan a QR code, create a dietary profile from those 150 different things. So gluten, vegan, keto, shellfish, save, and instantly the menu will customize to them to say, here's what you can eat, here's what you can eat with a modifier and what that modifier is, and here's what you can't eat. And just to your point, we do have an app. It's actually just in LA and in beta at the moment in terms of like discovering locations around you. Our main product kind of sits within restaurants, both on their website and via QR code, and it's more of a website, a URL type experience. But the app is we're building that critical mass of locations all the time.
Well, I travel to LA a lot, so when I heard you say LA, it piqued my interest. So I'm going to want to try it when I come to LA this December.
Absolutely, you should.
Okay. So in the meantime, this is super exciting because I know more and more people are aware of their allergies, their intolerances. They're paying attention to them, the way they make them feel. And it's more important than ever to be transparent so that people can be mindful about what the ingredients are. And I can't imagine why, people haven't thought of this before. And I know we talked about it, there are some other more antiquated solutions to it, but this seems the most advanced that I've seen so far and gives people the most flexibility and the most education so they can make the best decision for themselves. So I know you're celiac, and I'm sure that played a role in you innovating this. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what that journey was like for you and how you came up with this idea.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a bit of a weird one. People have probably clicked onto an Irish accent at this point. So I was born in Philly, funnily enough, but I grew up in Ireland, Irish parents, and yeah, I wasn't in the world of food or restaurant at all. I was a lawyer by trade, worked in corporate law and big law, and with a lot of the global tech companies, the Googles, Facebooks, Microsofts of the world. That journey took me to Australia to add even more complexity and geographical confusion into the mix. And it was while I was there that I started Foodini. And kind of as you outlined, my connection to the problem was celiac. So I was diagnosed when I was 10 after a few years of being, quite sick when they were trying to figure out back in the day, like what was wrong with me, like what kept, making me react this negatively. And once I figured it out, obviously been on the gluten-free diet ever since. And what I've found over time is at home, manageable, right? You go to the grocery store, the options keep getting better and better. I feel like year on year, and very manageable in the grand scheme of things. Could be a lot worse. Dining out, different story. And over the years, just had a culmination of, so many bad experiences in terms of restaurants not having any information documented. The dreaded, I think that's gluten free, that you often get from a staff member where they haven't a clue. Being served the wrong food and being sick for a few days after, the whole spectrum of things. And, in one way I'm fortunate, I'm not anaphylactic. Like I'm not gonna, drop on the ground if I get, given a trace of the wrong thing. But the reality is for many people with food allergies, that is the case. One tiny grain of the wrong thing can literally be life and death for them. And so for me, again, I just couldn't understand why there wasn't this transparency of information. That was kind of number one. And then I was looking into it and I was like, how is this possible? But I was like, maybe it's just because there's only a few of us. It's probably like I live in my own bubble of gluten free. There's a handful of us. It's just not worth it for the restaurants and for the food service industry. And then I looked into the numbers and that blew my mind. So in the US, you have 33 million Americans that have a diagnosed food allergy, right? That's like 1 in 10 diagnosed food allergy. Then you have another 50 million that have some form of food intolerance. That means they have a negative reaction to the food, but it's not like a medically diagnosed allergy per se. And then you have another 70 million people who follow a lifestyle diet. That's your vegan, your vegetarian, your keto, your paleo, your low FODMAP, your low carb, your you name it. And I was like, how is there such a big market on the consumer side, but just such a lack of information on the food service side? And we can talk in a minute about, why that has been the case and maybe what's changed that might make it easier going forward. But yeah, the kind of aha moment was this is a real problem that impacts a lot of people in a significant way. And there's just no solution out there. So I kind of decided to take a crack at doing something about it.
And I think that that's admirable. I mean, and it is a huge problem. And as you're saying those numbers, they're staggering. They're much greater than I ever could have imagined. And I mean, it's crazy, right?
I think, and maybe this is my personality, I think it was a bit more of a slow burn for me. I think it was a combination of a lifetime of experiences of living the problem that culminated in a few months of like in the back of my mind, I think there's like something here. Like, why is this? Which then resulted in me starting to research the size of the market in terms of how many people were impacted, which then resulted in me looking into, but surely somewhere in the world this has already been solved. It's probably in, New Zealand or Spain or somewhere, and it just hasn't made it here yet. But there's definitely a company that's solved for this already. And then I was like, okay, no, that's not the case either. And then I was like, I had I must be crazy. Like, if this was so obvious, someone would have done it already, of course. And so then I spent, still in my capacity as a lawyer, I spent several months doing like field research, talking to customers, talking to people, families with food allergies, talking to vegans, talking to people following lifestyle diets, and just trying to be like, is this really that big of a problem for you too? Like, it's a problem for me. Does it impact you in the same way? Do you struggle in the same way when you go to restaurants? Do you sometimes not go out and avoid it because of this? Yeah. And kept getting the same feedback, and then talk to restaurants. Is this a problem for you? Like, what do you do when customers come in with this? Oh, you don't really have a solution. You don't do anything. You hope for the best and cross your fingers. And so again, maybe it's the lawyer in me, but it was definitely it was an effort over a period of time to like educate myself on this. And then I got to a point where I kind of designed like a very basic MVP, got some really positive feedback on it, got some investor interest, and then that was okay. I've spent my time validating that this is real and there is a real opportunity and that this is a real problem that needs to be solved. And then I was like, right, I'm all in. Let's go do this.
So, how has it changed your life now that you can go to a restaurant? Obviously, the ones that that have this. What kinds of doors has it opened for you? What opportunities is it for you to eat? How does it make you feel now that you have access to this?
I think as a consumer, it's a few things. Like with the consumer hat on, it's inclusive for the first part, right? The amount of people that avoid social outings, their friend groups, their family outings, the Christmas lunch, with work, they can't get the information they need to know that they're going to be safe there. And it's awkward, it can be embarrassing, it can be whatever, and so a lot of people just take themselves out of the situation, don't go. And I feel like that's not good enough. And then there's another big segment who go, but they are nervous every bite they're taking. They're like, that waiter said he thinks there's not peanuts in here, but I didn't get conviction from him, and there's no document that says that. Did he even ask the chef? And so now I'm eating, but I'm on tenterhooks. I can't relax. I can't enjoy it, and I'm just hoping for the best. Again, that there's not something in here. So I think it's transparency gives trust. It gives inclusivity. It gives enjoyment back to the people who just want to be like everyone else. And again, most of the listeners here probably just take for granted they can walk into any restaurant and eat whatever they want, and that's amazing. But for the people who can't, it truly impacts them every meal, every day. And there's no one. Again, it's funny what we've learned over the years as well is that our super users are actually the moms of kids with food allergies, because again, that's where there's no one who just cares about this problem more, because again, especially as the kids start getting older in teenage years and eating without them, there's a constant fear for them that their child, will advocate for themselves maybe in the same way that mom always has done. So yeah, no, it's certainly a game changer, I think, for the people who fall into the bucket of needing to know what's in their food.
I would, yeah, I can imagine. A little bit of security goes a really long way. Those people that might have been tentative or, ambivalent about going out and wanting to participate now have a bit more flexibility and access.
100%. And the thing is, it's great for consumers, obviously, but for restaurants, like a lot of what we've had to do is educate them to explain that there's this huge segment of society that is not going to your restaurant because they don't understand or trust that they can.
Right.
But if you give them that information, not only are you attracting a massive segment, but you're also getting their friends, their families, their coworkers, because they're the decision maker when it comes to going out. You can't go. So if we're going for lunch, we can't go to somewhere that doesn't have a gluten-free option. And if I know that that place down the street does, and this one over here doesn't, well, we're going to the place that does, because otherwise I can't eat.
Right.
So it's a huge revenue opportunity for these restaurants. And again, it is the most loyal customer segment that exists, because these people find it so hard to find places that they trust, that when they do and they have a good experience, they keep going back again and again and again and again and again. So it's a huge revenue opportunity for the restaurants who take advantage of this transparency.
Well, so let's look at that population for a minute, right? You're talking about millions of people that have gluten or dairy or whatever peanut allergy, right? So what percentage of that population do you think, since launching the app, you've been able to tap into and increase their opportunities of going out in a safe way?
Hard to calculate. We're closing in on 500,000 kind of customers who've used our technology. In terms of creating a personalized menu. So I'm sure you could do the maths on what that is, and that's not insignificant at
No.
all, given how recent. We've only been in the US for just over a year. So we're definitely making a lot of progress. Most customers find our technology in the restaurant itself. So they'll go into a restaurant or onto a restaurant's website. They'll never have heard of Foodini before, but they'll see a button or a QR code where it says allergy dietary menu, and then they'll create that personalized menu for themselves in a few seconds, not necessarily knowing that we're the ones powering that in the back end. And so then they'll be like, "Whoa, I've never seen this before. Like this is amazing. How can I get this other places?" And then they'll see, "Oh, what's this Foodini in the top left corner?" And then they kind of track us down that way. So most
So,
customers discover us through our partners.
so is it like I'm picturing a menu? Is it like in a corner, there's a QR code and it says, customize or,
Exactly. Allergy dietary menu. Scan here.
allergy dietary. Okay, so that's what will be there, and then they'll click on it with their phone. And people are used to using phones now, whether it's even to pay a bill or to get menus. People are shying away from wasting paper and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of more comfort, I'd say, with
100%.
using
Yeah.
that now.
I think as well, obviously not just for the consumer, but for the restaurant also, the reality of food, and again, I think it's important. There might be people on here who work in the food or restaurant industry, and it's very easy to say, oh, the big bad restaurants won't publish this information. Like how, why not? Like, why are they not doing this? But like, we've so much empathy for that industry, because this is really hard to do. Like, if there was just this magic bowl of accurate data that restaurants could tap into to give this to consumers, they would. They absolutely would. But the problem is that the way supply chain works in the United States, from like manufacturer to supplier to distributor down to restaurants, and the way the data layer that currently exists, and the way ingredients can change, and suppliers can swap out at the last minute this brand of mayo for that brand of mayo because they ran out of the first brand of mayo. Like, there are reasons why it's very hard to get this information accurate and keep it accurate. in the reality of running a restaurant, except with the exception probably of like the big enterprise groups.
Mm.
And so one of the reasons why a digital solution is or we believe a digital solution is so important is because menus change all the time, recipes change all the time, ingredients change all the time, and it's really hard to keep this accurate and up to date and keep reprinting your menus and reprinting your menu boards and updating your information on your kiosk and on your website and da 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 if you have to do that manually in all these different places. Whereas we kind of sit in the middle as the aggregator and collector of this data, who make sure we keep it up to date and also propagate it to all of those different places where a restaurant's menu lives, to make sure that the consumer is constantly seeing as accurate as possible data.
It's so comprehensive what you built, and it's so hard to maintain the, updating it. And I think a digital solution really does solve that problem, because how many times have you gotten yesterday's menu today, right? Because they're changing it all the time. And not only is that not the correct menu, it's also a waste of paper, right? And printing and all sorts of things. And it has to be done manually or by a person. So there's lots of things that go into that. So I think that this solution makes a whole lot of sense. And when I think about it, I think about the technology that you had to build. And you kicked this off telling us that you were an attorney, and that, over the next, while you did the research and you built your MVP. Was that, did you have that skill set? Did you have to go learn that skill set? Or did you surround yourself with people that could build it for you? What did that look like?
I did not have that skill set, and I absolutely have not learned that skill set. If you
Okay.
if you asked me to write a line of code right now, you'd be waiting a long, long time before I successfully managed that myself, unless I had my ChatGPT friend or someone beside me. No, I think I'm good at knowing what I'm good at, and I'm good at knowing what I'm not good at, and I'm certainly not a technology coding type person. But I was very fortunate to surround myself, to your point, with people who are. And so whether it's our CTO Kent, who is a technology whiz, and Cameron, our other senior backend engineer, who have become real experts from a tech perspective in terms of menu schemas and the technology and how everything works in the back end, to my co-founder Erica, who spent 15 years in restaurant and food tech in the US, and so also understood kind of intimately how menus interact and schemas and everything there, and a number of our advisors as well, and some of our investors as well, and just due diligence myself in terms of maybe learning less about how to code the technology, but more about what the product needed to do to be able to solve the problem, and then bringing the tech team in to actually execute. I think that's definitely been more my approach. Yeah, I have not and will not be learning how to code anytime soon. That's for sure.
Of course, I totally understand. And I'm a big advocate of surrounding yourself with those experts and leaning into what your skill set is. I mean, we all do best with what we know, and we're more passionate about it, and we can figure it out, and we can be more efficient with our time and our energy. And having that expert around really can just drive things to a whole nother place that doing it yourself can often be challenging. Not to say it can't be done, but I'm with you in terms of the journey and how, that what resonates with me. So when we go back and you're going through that time and you're doing the research and you're investigating all these things and you're building this MVP, and this was pre-funding, correct?
Yeah, MVP was pre-funding. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about how you put that all together. Was that self-funded? Were people on board? Were they, were they going to be part of the company? What did that look like? Because everybody has a different journey building that community and getting it off the ground. So I'd love to hear what it was like for you.
Yeah, no, the very first MVP, which I then used to go get funding, was self-funded. So I suppose I was lucky; I had a bit in savings, and so took some of that money, and I actually went to like an offshore dev agency, and asked that, like, don't think it was anything crazy at the time, maybe like $15,000, something like that, to like build me like a bare bones MVP that like was technology that functioned. I
Mhm.
think the big difference nowadays, where AI comes in, is you've companies like Lovable and other, Claude and all the GPTs, where a probably smart kid now could probably do that in a week by themselves, which is scary, or maybe even less, at very little cost. But that's, I suppose, the difference between now and a few years ago. So I had that. I also had my head dietitian who's still with me to this day, who I kind of had already sourced at that point in time, and was I don't, she wasn't a full-time employee at this point in time. I think she was more like consulting part-time as I was kind of trying to think this through. So she was my first kind of team member, let's call it. And then or between us, we were kind of trying to onboard a few initial restaurants onto this MVP platform that I had got built offshore. And that was kind of enough to kind of show, here's what it could like, the very bare bones what it looks like. We have worked with some restaurants, we've got customer feedback on the experience, it's all really positive. Now I need money to build this properly and to actually scale this solution and build a bigger team around me. And yeah, that's how I went about it.
Wow. Okay, that's exciting. So now you've built something that can be used online, and you have a beta in LA. What are your next plans for Foodini?
Yeah, so we work with, so beta from a consumer app in LA. But in terms of like restaurants, hotels, stadiums, like anyone on the B2B side, we're working with all over the country and in Australia and in Canada. So again, anyone listening who falls into any of those spaces of food service or restaurants who finds this interesting, we can absolutely support and work with you. So our big focus right now, and this is actually kind of interesting, if you've any listeners who have food allergies, traditionally, up until a few weeks ago in the US, there's been zero regulation around food allergies in restaurants. Didn't have to document, didn't have to label, nothing, no requirements. In California, on the 13th of October, so about 3 weeks ago, Gavin Newsom signed the first piece of regulation that relates to food allergies in restaurants. And that mandates that as at 1 July next year, so only 7 months away, all restaurant groups of 20 plus locations, where one of those locations are in California, so pretty much every like big chain and mid-market chain in the country, must label all of their menus for the major nine food allergens. And so that completely changes the game, we believe, in terms of now all of these groups who maybe this wasn't a priority for, or they thought it was too hard, or they were worried about it, now has no choice. They must document this and they must put it on their menus. And they are allowed to use a QR solution to do that, which of course is good for us. But aside from that, I see this as the first domino that has fallen towards echoing what happens in Europe, whereby all restaurants will be required to document their food allergens on their menu. And frankly, I think that is the way it should be. I think it's a massive constant health and safety issue, the fact that this is not the case. And this bill that just passed in California is now the blueprint to get this not just across every state as it is, but also down to every restaurant, not just the kind of chains with 20 plus locations. And so our focus right now is to make sure that we're working with all of these restaurants, and instead of maybe traditionally they might have gone and paid a consultant $15,000 for a static PDF that sits on their website, we're telling them now, with the advent of technology and AI and solutions like ours, you can actually do this in a much more scalable, much cheaper, much easier, much quicker way that also is a much better experience for your consumers. And so we're really focused on working with all of those groups. And then obviously any other restaurant along the way who decides that this is something that they want to do as well. And then from there, we'll continue to scale the consumer app, because the big thing really in that, as you would imagine, is I don't want someone in Kentucky to download the app and there only be one restaurant in Kentucky. You know what I mean? You want there to be enough restaurants that it's actually you're discovering new places, which is the whole point. So we'll gradually expand that from state to state and city to city as we continue to add more options for those consumers. But that's not to say anyone who wants to check out the app, it's on the app stores, would love any feedback or thoughts from the food allergy community, always on ways we could make it better, or innovate, or just feedback. Generally speaking, we always love talking to anyone who has a passion for this space.
So if I was gonna, ask you a little bit about the experience and what that's like for you on a personal level, not everybody else, but you in particular. So you want to go out to dinner. Tell me what that journey is like for you.
With Foodini,
Um, in
or
general,
just
like,
generally?
are you going to Foodini first to see what your options are? Like, what does it look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, and you'll understand this. If someone says to you, "Hey, want to go to dinner at Jelena tomorrow night?" the first thing you're going to do if you have a food allergy is look at the menu.
Hmm.
Because at this point in time, I don't know the first thing about this place, and I don't know what kind of food they serve, and they might have nothing but pizza and no gluten-free crust. So straight away, that means I can't eat. So like, you have to look at the menu as a consumer, right? So you look at the menu, and then you're looking it up and down. And again, I've been doing this long enough that you get a sense that, yeah, there it looks like, there's things here that should be right, but you still don't know.
Right.
99% of the time, unless again, there are certain venues that fair play, at least label for, things like gluten-free, vegan, and vegetarian, but they definitely don't label for almonds and dairy and gluten, as you kind of alluded to in your scenario. So, um, my normal routine, regardless of Foodini, is look up the menu. If I can't see the information I need, then you're either emailing or calling to clarify, right? The difference when I do go into a restaurant that has this documented in some manner, shape, or form, whether that's with Foodini or otherwise, is I can, if I use Foodini, in 5 seconds, click see allergy menu, gluten free, save, bah, 20 things I can eat, great, book it, done. No calling, no emailing, no, process. I just have the information at my fingertips. If not, again, you're just relying on whoever answers the phone, who again, more times than not, doesn't know. Because if they don't have the information on their website, again, 99% of the time, that person who answers the phone doesn't have the information either. And that's where there was actually a pretty scary stat that came out earlier this year. There was a report that was issued which said that, to be specific, 53.9% of allergy incidences that occur in restaurants happen after the staff have been notified about the food allergen. And so that again just tells you, you know, the system is broken when humans are brought into the loop and holistically. And so again, it just kind of reinforced uh, our strong view that this has to be a technical source of truth that doesn't just rely on humans to always get it right, because it's
That's
very
so
hard for a
true.
wait staff to be an expert in every allergen and every ingredient and every menu item. It's very difficult, and I have empathy for them.
And there people are at risk here. So I think there's a real risk factor, and I think there's a real concern. So Dylan, this has been amazing. I'm so excited for what you're doing. I can't wait to see it, open up in so many different other areas. Um, and for those folks that are maybe consumers and want to learn more and maybe even want to try this out, what's the best way for them to dig in a little deeper?
Yeah, so I think first is our website, foodini.co. That is kind of explains how we work and how we work with restaurants and our processes and whatnot. That's number one. Any consumer or person out there who has a food allergy or dietary need, who just, if you're in LA, amazing. If you're in the US, full stop, and just want to like understand what the future of personalized menus looks like, would love you to check out the app, create your dietary profile, and put your location into Los Angeles and have a look at what that kind of experience looks like and what we're building towards. And then anyone who wants to reach out to me, like I said, I love speaking to people in the community, whether that's on the consumer side or the restaurant side. My email is Dylan, Dylan, at getfoodini, GETFOODINI.com. Like I said, always love having conversations. And LinkedIn, you can also find me pretty easily on there, Dylan McDonnell.
Awesome, Dylan. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about Foodini and your journey and even your personal issues around celiac and what inspired you to build this business. It's going to be so important for so many. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. I told you wouldn't want to miss this, especially if you have a food allergy, because this is going to be integral to how people can continue to eat in a more safe way, enabling them to make more informed choices and be mindful and take the responsibility out of the waiter's hands who may not have all the information. So thank you.
Not at all. Thank you. And thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it and really enjoyed the chat.